So good morning and have a nice day to you all, my dear children. Since some of you have asked in the comments section that you want me to do some grade 10 and 11 lessons that are available in the grade 10, 11 Buddhism textbooks, right? So I hopefully, thought of doing some kind of common lessons that you can find in the both 10 and 11 textbooks, right? So one of such common lesson is the Buddhist Council or Dharma Sangayana, which you are pretty familiar with, right? So here I'm sharing the screen with you, right? And before I start with the main points, I would like to draw your attention to the previous O-level questions, on this lesson, Buddhist councils, right? So you will all the time find at least one question from Buddhist councils from this lesson. Especially in your O-level paper, you will definitely find one kind of answer from this lesson, right? Because when you look at the past papers from 2016 up to 2021, so if you take a look to all those papers, so you can have an idea, right? Now, for example, 2016 O-level, there was a question from Buddhist councils, right? So you can have a look at this one, question number 5, 2016 O-level paper, right? So the question is basically from the first Buddhist Council, and 2017 O-level. The question is specifically from the third Buddhist Council, right? So the Buddhist Council question in 2018 paper is from the second Buddhist Council, and in 2019 O-levels, this question is coming from the first Buddhist Council, and then 2020 O-level, it's about the fourth Theravada Buddhist Council, and 2021 is about the third Buddhist Council. So this is how in every O-level paper the Buddhist Council kind of question has been given. So somehow you have to be thorough with the Buddhist councils, especially 1, 2, 3, 4 Buddhist councils, first, second, third, and fourth, right? And for the fourth Buddhist council, you might know that there are 2 Buddhist councils that we consider as the fourth one. So one is Mahayana Buddhist Council. It is also considered as the fourth Buddhist council. And there is another one, Theravada Buddhist Council, which was held in Sri Lanka in Mathalayaluvihari. It is also considered as the fourth Buddhist council, but it's Theravada, right? So, and the another fourth Buddhist council was held in India during the time of Kanishka, King Kanishka. And that is also considered as the fourth, right? So in case if you find a question about the fourth Buddhist council, they will either ask about the fourth Theravada Buddhist Council or else fourth Mahayana Buddhist Council. So you have to be a little careful about that. But you don't need to worry a lot, because very often you will find a question from first, second, and third Buddhist councils. at a rare cases, you may, find a question from the Fourth Buddhist Council. So you don't need to worry a lot about the fourth one. Just have a look at the first, second, and third Buddhist councils. Okay, let's have a look, right? So I'm sharing the screen with you. This is the lesson of Buddhist councils, right? Dharma Sangayana or Sangiti in Pali. Sangayana is also in Sinhala, and Buddhist councils in English. So this lesson you will find both in grade 10 and 11 textbooks, especially lesson number 16 in grade 11 textbook and lesson number 19 in grade 10, right? So what's the meaning of a council, a conference? The basic meaning of a council or Sangayana. Sangayana means they get together. Sangayana, they rehearse something, right? They get together somewhere and they rehearse the teachings of the Buddha, right? So there are records of several Buddhist councils in the history of Buddhism, right? So most of the time, monks, they get together in a specific location, and somebody or a ruler or a kind of an authorized person sponsor the council, and a number of monks get together somewhere, and for a certain period of time, they hold their conference, their meeting, where they recite, where they read, where they rehearse the teachings of the Buddha together, right? Together in a single tone, right? They rehearse together so that they can make sure that there is no any errors in the teachings. Because when all the people, they read something or rehearse something together, while memorizing and reading something together all at once in a single tone, then it means that there is no issue. There are no issues, right? In terms of the teachings, everything is clear and properly memorized, right? So since they had no kind of writing system at the time, the teachings of the Buddha had been transmitted orally from mouth to mouth, or else we call it words of mouth, right? Mukha parampara, right? So they wanted to make sure that everything is correct and there are no mistakes, no errors, right? And that is the reason why a Dhamma Sangayana or a Buddhist council had been a kind of organized, right? And there are reasons, right? There are reasons why we, organize a Buddhist council, especially to protect the Dhamma Vinaya, or to preserve the teachings of the Buddha in one hand, and on the other, to sort out certain issues, right? To sort out certain disputes or issues with regard to certain anti-disciplinary kind of things, right? That are against the teachings of the Buddha, right? So to sort out all those kind of anti-Buddhist thoughts and ideas, right? Leading monks, they conducted a kind of meeting or a conference, right? They held a conference, especially to organize the teachings of the Buddha, and at the same time to sort out the issues that came up in the Buddhism itself, right? So that's the main, that these two are the main purposes of holding a conference, right? Okay, now let's have a look at the history of Buddhist councils, right? The first Buddhist council, you know what, here, as far as a Buddhist council is concerned, right? Concerned. You have to memorize certain points. What are the points? You just have to memorize, or you just have to remember where the council was held, when it was held, was the kind of gathering, the number of gathering, who involved in to this kind of conference, who was the main sponsor, how long it was held, the reason, and the result. That's it, right? Where, when, who, the main sponsor, the chairperson, and then the reason and the results. That's it, right? You just have to memorize certain main points. Then you can easily answer this question. Okay, let's have a look at the first one. So, according to the historical records available in the Chulavagga and Mahavagga Pali, the first Buddhist council was held 3 months after the death of the Buddha, right? 3 months after the demise of the Buddha. So, which is around 544 BCE, right? So that means 544 years before the Jesus Christ, right? So where it was held at the entrance of Saptaparni cave at city of Rajagaha, modern day Rajgir in India, right? And who was the president of the conference, right? Who was the president of the meeting? Reverend Mahakassapa was the president. He was the presiding person. And at the same time, some monks extended their support to keep it going. They extended their support to Mahakassapa Hamduru. So those kind of responsible monks were Ananda Thero and Upali Thero, right? But the chairperson was Mahakassapa Thero, right? Do not forget that. Then sponsored by King Ajatasattu. The Ajatasattu was the main sponsor, right? The son of Bimbisar, right? Then gathering 500 monks. Okay, so it's called Panchasatika Pansiya. Since the gathering was 500 monks, so it's called Panchasatika. Panchasata means 500. Pansiya, right? Panchasatika, right? Sometimes in your MCQ papers, there are questions like, what is defined by Panchasatika? What is meant by Panchasatika, right? Panchasatika means the first Buddhist council that was held 3 months after the demise of the Buddha with 500 gathering. That's why it's called Panchasatika, right? Okay, keep that in mind. The time period, the duration of the council was like 7 months, right? Not a week or 2 weeks, right? The council was held for 7 months. So you can just imagine we had such a profound and the teachings of the Buddha scattered here and there, right? So the leading monks, they all got together and they rehearsed it and they organized it. Right? They organized the teachings of the Buddha in a kind of proper manner, in a proper system. Systematically, they organized the teachings of the Buddha being in a single location for a 7 month, right? Now, let's have a look at the reason, right? The reason was simply Shubhadra Bhikshuvagya Abhadra Vachana in singular, right? That means the alarming statement made by Bhikkhu Subhadra, who was ordained in his old age, Buddha Bhabhajita, right? He was ordained in his old age. When he was old, then he ordained, right? So he had no much idea about the Vinaya, Sikshapada, right? Then what was his alarming statement? You can have a look at this one, right? Enough. දැන් ඇති, right? මහාන දැන් ඇති, ඇවැත්නි. It's enough. Do not grieve, අඬන්න එපා. Do not lament, ශෝක කරන්න එපා. We are freed from that great ශ්‍රමණ. අපි දැන් ඒ මහා ශ්‍රමණයාගෙන් මිදුණා. මිදුණු වෙමු. And there is no one to instruct us now. දැන් අපට අවවාද උපදෙස් දෙන්න කෙනෙක් නැහැ. Let's do what is good for us and let's not do what is not good for us. දැන් අපිට හොඳයි කියලා හිතන දේ කරමු, අපිට හොඳ නැහැ කියලා හිතන දේ නොකරමු. This was really an alarming, a dangerous statement, right? A quite dangerous statement, right? Because how can somebody make such an alarming statement soon after the death of the master, right? The master had just passed away, but immediately a group of monks are having some kind of an attitude which is quite dangerous, right? So considering this alarming statement, the leading monk at the time, Mahakassapa, he decided to to convene a kind of council in order to sort out that issue, right? And according to some other reference, not only the main reason was the alarming statement of Subhadra, but there had been some other reasons, right? For example, the issues and the problem created by Devadatta's group, the Devadatta, right? And there had been another monk called Sati, Sunakhat, and so on. So there were some monks who had some kind of quite radical views and thoughts, radical behavior, right? Who did not listen to the advice of the Buddha and elders, right? Elder monks. So the leading monks, they really needed to discuss all these issues, to talk about all these issues and take an immediate step to cope with all these issues. And that's the reason why the first Buddhist council was held in Rajagaha, right? So remember that the reason, simply the alarming statement made by Subhadra, right? And the statement, you have to remember the statement, do not cry, do not lament, now we are free from the great Sramana. Now we can do whatever we want. Nobody is there to instruct us. Now we can do what is not good for us, and what is good for us, and we should not do what is not good for us, right? And there are some other reasons, right? Problems, created by Devadatta's group and Sati's group, right? Okay, then the result. This is very important. What are the results of the first Buddhist council? As I have mentioned, their main purpose was to make the teachings of the Buddha into a kind of a systematic order, right? Organized order. And which is why in the first Buddhist council, all the teachings that the Buddha had taught here and there, and some teachings of the disciples, they organized it, they rehearsed it, and having rehearsed all the teachings, they have categorized them as Sutta and Vinaya. Sutta means the Sutra, Vinaya means monastic rules that Buddha had promulgated for the discipline of monks, right? So Sutta was categorized into 5 sections according to their size, according to their length, right? Sutta was divided into 5 sections as Diga Nikaya, Majjhima, Anguttara, Sangyukta, and Khuddaka, right? So Diga means bigger size suttas. I mean, you will find lengthy suttas in that section. Majjhima means middle-sized suttas. Anguttara means miscellaneous, and Sangyutta means kind of Sangyukta, short. Khuddaka means minor size suttas. You will find them in this particular 5 sections. See how the systematic order, had been introduced in the first Buddhist council, right? And not only that, they did not only systematically categorize the teachings of the Buddha into 5 sections, suttas into 5 sections, but also they handed over it to different monks to preserve them for future generation, right? So Digha Nikaya was handed over to Venerable Ananda and his disciples. Majjhima Nikaya was handed over to Venerable Sariputta, and Anguttara Nikaya to Venerable Anuruddha and disciples. Samyutta Nikaya to Venerable Kassapa, Mahakassapa and his disciples. Khuddaka Nikaya for all the monks, right? See how organized the system is, how nice the order is, right? So this is the result, right? Please do not forget this one, right? What is the result of the first Buddhist council and what is the reason, right? And then, of course, Sutta was, categorized into 5 sections, and then Vinaya Pitaka, Sutta Pitaka and Vinaya Pitaka, right? We do not find any Abhidhamma in the first Buddhist council, right? There is no such a term called Abhidhamma, right? So Sutta was divided into kind of 5 sections, and Vinaya was also divided into 5 texts. You can have a look at this. Parajika Pali, Pajitya Chullavagga, Mahavagga Parivar. Right? So Vinaya means simply this is a collection of text where you can find the monastic rules, the rules and kind of regulations to be practiced by or to be followed by Buddhist monks and nuns, right? So Vinaya Pitaka was completely, handed over to Upali Hamadru for the preservation. Upali Hamadru and his disciples, okay, you keep it, you and your pupils continue it orally, Mukha Paramparavin, just preserve it for the future generation, right? Okay. So these are the outcome or results of the first Buddhist council, right? Very simple. Do not forget this, right? And then we can have a look at the second Buddhist council, right? So as I have mentioned, you have to remember certain things of a council. Certain things mean like when, where, the president monk, and the main sponsor, the number of gathering, location, and reason and the result, right? You have to remember those things. Okay, let's have a look at this point. When? So the second Buddhist council was held 100 years after the demise of the Buddha, right? Buddha Parinirvana or the Siyagya, 100 years after the demise of the Buddha. So the first Buddhist council was held 3 months after the demise of the Buddha. Demise means parinirvana, death, right? But the second Buddhist council was held 100 years after the demise of the Buddha, where the location simply Valuka Ramaya temple at Vishala or Vaishali city, modern day Bihar in India, right? And who was the president monk? Who was the presiding person? Who chaired the meeting? Who chaired the conference? So it was Rahan Sabbakam, right? Sabakami. But at the same time, some monks have extended their support. They have given their support to Arhan Sabakami for him to, properly, hold the meeting, right? So the assistants, monks were Bhikkhu Revata, Sabbakami, Yasasala, Kujyasobhita, Vasabhagami, Sumanas, and so on, right? Sanavasa, Sambhut, and so on, right? You don't need to remember all these names, right? Just um, keep the main monk in your mind, the main president monk, right? Keep his name in your mind. Okay, then sponsored. Who was the main sponsor? Simply King Kala Ashoka, right? Not Dharma Ashoka, it's King Kala Ashoka. And the gathering, 700 arahants, right? 700 monks. Since the gathering was 700 Hatsiyak, so it's called Satta Satika Satsiyak, right? And how long the council was held, right? So the council was held for 8 months. 8 months, not 1 or 2, but 8, right? 8 mas atak. Then the reason, right? The reason is always important as far as a Buddhist council is concerned, right? Not concerned, but concerned. Sorry. Okay. So you can remember the reason of the first Buddhist council. It was because of the alarming statement made by Bhikkhu Subhadda. So in the same way, the reason for the second Buddhist council was mainly the 10 non-permissible rules of Vajjiputtaka bhikkhus, right? 10 kind of unsuitable demands, right? Unsuitable rules that had been followed by a group of monks called Vajjiputtaka from Vajji kingdom. Might be they are from the Vajji kingdom, right? In Sinhala, we call it Vajjiputtaka Bhikshunke Dasa Akapavastu, right? So according to the evidence, records available in the Tipitaka, these are the 10 kind of unsuitable or not kind of lawful demands, right? These are the 10 unlawful kind of rules followed by the Vajjiputtaka monks. You don't need to memorize all this, right? Just know the main reason why it was held. Because of the Vajjiputtaka Bhikshunga Dasakapavastu. Because of the 10 unsuitable or unlawful rules followed by the Vajjiputtaka Bhikshus. And for your better understanding, I have given the 10 points here, right? You can have a look. You don't need to memorize this. Just have a look. Storing salt in a horn, Singilona. Eating food when the shadow of the sun had passed 2 fingers breadth beyond noon. Eat once and then go again to the village for alms, right? Holding of the Uposatha separately by monks dwelling in the same district. Carrying out an official act when the assembly is incomplete. Following a practice because it is so done by one's tutor or teacher. Eating of sour milk by one who has already had his midday meal. Use of the strong drink before it has fermented. Use of blankets which have unstitched, then accepting of gold and silver. Most of the things here are about their lifestyle, comfortabilities. They were searching. In fact, they were searching for comforts, right? And materials in life. Right? Now you can have a look at the second, 10th one, accepting of gold and silver. Monks do not do like that. Monks do not ask for gold and money from the people, but if someone is very friendly, then we ask some kind of support, financial support. Please, Dayaka Mahatyo, I'm in need of some money. Can you help me like that? Otherwise, it's not suitable for monks to ask for materials or money or gold from people. That is not kind of good and suitable for a monk. But this Vajraputtaka bhikshu, they had been practicing this for a certain period of time, right? And finally, one of the leading monks at the time, he came to know this issue when he was just going around this Vajji city. He just found that Vajraputtaka monks are following these rules and they are asking golds and silvers from people, right? Which he then realized that is not good, right? That is not suitable for a monk. Then he reported immediately reported it to a leading monk, and then it comes the need of a council, right? So this very reason paved the way for a Buddhist council. This is the main reason why there was a need of a Buddhist council, or the second Buddhist council, right? Then what happened was, in that council of 700 arahants, right? They examined, they investigated these 10 points one by one, getting feedback from people and getting, questions from different people, and getting their opinions about these 10 rules. And finally, what happened was, all these 10 rules, were declared invalid and not in accord with the Vinaya, right? They are completely against the Vinaya rules and regulations, and they are not moral. They are immoral, right? They are not in par with Dhamma and Vinaya, right? And as a result, what happened was, uh, even though these 10 rules had been declared invalid and not good, not suitable for a monk, but Vajraputtaka bhikshus, they did not accept this opinion made by the Sangitikaraka Theros, right? They did not accept this opinion. No, what you kind of order, what you order is not, is not our cup of tea. We don't accept what you kind of decide. Your decision is not a big issue for us, right? We would follow our rules as we have been following for a long time. So we don't care what is your decision, right? We don't care about your decision, right? So what happened was, Vajraputtaka monks, even though they had been rejected from this main group, somehow Vajraputtaka, they separated from the main group and they established another sect called Mahasangika, right? Mahasangika. They established a separate group, and they also held another council separately, which is called Mahasangika, and the gathering was around 1,500 monks, right? So you know what? This is probably, or this is obviously, the beginning of Mahayana Buddhism, right? What you find Mahayana or Theravada nowadays. This is the kind of incident how Mahayana Buddhism, initiated as a result of the second Buddhist council, right? Since the Vajraputtaka monks, they did not accept the decision made by the Sangitikaraka council, still they remained as Buddhist monks, and they said, no, we are not ready to accept your decisions. So we are just separating from you. We are going out. So they separated from the main group, and they established a new sect called Sangika, right? And Mahasangika. So then they also organize a new kind of system, right? And they had a kind of a separate Buddhist council, right? Along with 1,500 monks, right? It's a huge kind of a movement, right? It was a huge movement, and it was the beginning of the Mahayana tradition, right? So remember that in the Second Buddhist Council, we find a group of Buddhist monks, uh, you know, is separated from the main group. You know, the schism or split up. The community of monks are separated into two groups, right? One is Theravada. They were not identified as Theravada somehow, right? But the group which was separated from the main group was identified as Mahasangika, right? Because they held a huge Sangiti, Mahasangiti, with 1,500 monks. So it was called Mahasangiti, right? Okay. So this is simply the result, right? Dasakapavastu was declared immoral, and it is against the Dhamma and Vinaya. Then what happened? The Vajiputtaka monks, they conducted another council with 1,500 monks, and they established a new sect called Maha Sangiti, right? So that is the beginning of the Mahayana tradition, right? So this is the overall result of the Second Buddhist Council, right? Now let's have a look at the Third Buddhist Council, right? So the Third Buddhist Council was, you know, presumably held in 236 years, sorry, 236 BCE. That means 236 years after the death of the Buddha, right? During the period of Dharma Sangayana, right? So you have to remember the time of the council. The first Buddhist council was held 3 months after the death of the Buddha. The second Buddhist council was held 100 years after the death of the Buddha. And the third Buddhist council was held 236 years after the death of the Buddha, right? Do not forget that. And where Ashoka Ramaya temple at Pataliputra city, right? Modern day Patna in India, right? Okay. And the presiding monk was Arahan Mogali Tissa, right? And at the same time, the assistance was extended by Venerable Mahinda, Maharakita, Mahadev, and so on. And the period or the duration of the council was 9 months. The main sponsor or the main patron was Emperor Dharmashoka, and the number of gathering was 1,000 erudite monks. Since the gathering was 1,000, thus it's called Sahasika. Sahasra means Dahasak, right? Reason, what was the reason? Simply anti-disciplinary acts performed by certain bhikkhus who entered the sasana expecting various gains and profits. You know, I would tell you the story in brief. Dharmashoka was at the beginning not a Buddhist, but after the Kalinga War, he was quite upset. So he wanted to find peace. Right? He was very rude at the beginning, Chandashoka, but having seen a small novice, right, having been inspired by the peaceful nature of a monk, somehow the Chandashoka turned to Dharmashoka, and he followed Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. And then as a result, what happened was non-Buddhist clergies, Brahmanas, they had some kind of lack in gains and materials, because the king started supporting Buddhist monks. So the monks in other religions, they did not get much support from the king. So what they did was they themselves, ordained as Buddhist monks, right? They were acting like Buddhist monks. They just without any proper guidance, without any proper uh, rules, without any teacher, they themselves adorned with a kind of orange colored robe, and they were acting like monks, asking things from here and there and gaining profits from the king, right? This had been a really problematic, incident, right? They did not even follow rules, no vinaya, nothing. They were, only getting profits and benefits from the king, right? And other people. So this was really a problematic situation for the real monks. Fake monks are, spoiling the Buddha Sasana, yeah? But the real monks were very silent. They were not arrogant. They were just observing this situation, right? Somehow the king came to know this issue, that there are fake monks who have entered into the sasana and they are spoiling the teachings of the Buddha, right? So the king, having known this trouble, this problem, he immediately summoned a kind of conference, a council, in order to purify the Buddha Sasana, in order to purify the Sangha society, right? So that was the reason. That was the reason of the Third Buddhist Council. Uh, you know, Anti-disciplinary activities performed by fake Buddhist monks who entered the order or who became monks in order to gain profits and benefits from the king. And they had been ordained without a proper guidance, right? Without any teacher. They just purposely, they themselves uh, ordained as monks, and they were not following any Vinaya rules, right? Then, as a result, what happened was the king immediately called for a meeting, called for a council, and erudite monks, they just had, got together in a certain place, and they uh, took initial steps for a council, right? So then, as a result of this council, what was the outcome? It is kind of a very significant point or turning point, I would say. It was definitely a turning point of Buddhism, right? You can have a look, right? This is the result of the Third Buddhist Council, right? Elimination of rebellious bhikkhus and sending Dhamma missionaries to 9 destinations. Yeah. So all the fake monks, they had been expelled from the sasana. They had been expelled from the monkhood. They had been disrobed by the officials, right? And the number of such fake monks, 65,000. 60,000 fake Buddhist monks, they had been disrobed. You just go, you are not a real monk, get out from the sasana. So they had been disrobed, right? 60,000 fake monks, right? And then Dhamma and Vinaya started to, purify, kind of, right? Monks started to follow the Vinaya rules, the real monks, right? Then one of the most significant kind of incident in the history of Buddhism is that King Dharmashoka, as a result of the Third Buddhist Council, sending monks to neighboring destinations, to neighboring countries in order to promote Buddhism, right? He did not only kind of organized or balance the Buddhism in his country. He did not only tackle the situation in his country, but also he wanted to pass the message of Buddhism to other states as well, right? So he was like, now Buddhism is established in my country, and I want to develop, I want to promote it to other destinations as well, right? That was what he thought, right? And as a result, he sends 9 Dhamma missionaries, or 9 Buddhist monks, to 9 destinations. We will be discussing those 9 destinations soon, right? And before that, Abhidhamma. We know Tipitaka means Sutta Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka, Abhidhamma Pitaka. In the first and second Buddhist council, we do not find a term Abhidhamma. But in the third Buddhist council only, we find Abhidhamma is coming out as a separate Pitaka, right? That is also a result of the third Buddhist council. Abhidhamma is coming out as a separate Pitaka called Abhidhamma Pitaka, and which is consisting of 7 texts, 7 treatises. Dharma Sangayana, Vibhanga, Dhatu Katha, Puggala Panyati, Kathavatu, Yamaka Patthana, right? And in this third Buddhist council, the chair monk, the chairing or the chairperson, Moggaliputta Tissahamuduru, he added this Kathavatu Pakarana into Abhidhamma Pitaka and finalized it as a complete Pitaka, right? And the author of this treatise is Arahan Moggaliputta Tissa, right? Then, yeah, so then Abhidhamma is coming as a separate Pitaka only in the third Buddhist council, as a result of the third Buddhist council, right? Okay, then as we have been talking about the 9 missionaries being sent to the 9 neighboring states, right? Here are the 9 neighboring states, right? Okay, so this is a turning point of Buddhism, and in the history of Buddhism, we find this after the demise of the Buddha. This is the very first time when the teachings of the Buddha was internationally promoted, right? So have a look at this order, numbers. Majyatika Hamdru, he was sent to Kashmir. Mahadeva to Mahishamandala. Rakita Hamdru was sent to Tamil Nadu. And a Greek monk called Dhammarakita, he was sent to western border, Gujarat, Sindh, and so on. Mahadhammarakita Hamdru was sent to Maharashtra. Maharakita was sent to Greeks and so on, Persia. Majjhima Hamdru was sent to northern Nepal, Himalaya. Sona and Uttara Hamdru they were sent to Southeast Asia, what you call Myanmar and Thailand. And Reverend Mahinda, right? He was sent to Sri Lanka along with Uttiya, Ittiya, Sambala, and Bhattasala, right? So this is very important, right? Mehindu Hamdru, he arrived to Sri Lanka in 236 BCE as a result of the Third Buddhist Council, as a result of the missionary activities initiated by King Dharma Ashoka, right? So this is very important, right? The Third Buddhist Council, right? So, okay, we are moving to the final one, right? Fourth Buddhist Council, right? So as I have mentioned at the beginning, Fourth Buddhist Council, if you call fourth, Hataraveni, but there are 2 Buddhist councils we consider as the fourth, right? So as far as the fourth Buddhist Council is concerned, there are 2 Buddhist councils counted as the fourth. So one is the Theravada Buddhist Council, which was held in Matalayalu Vihari, and another one is Mahayana Buddhist Council, which was held in India during the period of Kanishka. Let's have a look at this one. Theravada one, right? The fourth Buddhist council, Theravada, right? Tradition, roughly in 29 BCE, right? That means 30 years before the Jesus Christ, right? And where? Matale Aluvihari in Sri Lanka. And the sponsored person, in the previous councils, every time the sponsor was the ruler, the king of the country. But this time, in Sri Lankan context, the main sponsor was a regional leader, Pradeshia Naikek, right? And the number of gathering was 500 Pustakaru erudite monks. These monks had a profound, penetrative knowledge about Buddhism, right? And up to this point, the teachings of the Buddha had been preserving orally as a word of mouth, right? Mukha parampara. So there was a need, there was a real need to keep them written down somewhere so that there would be no any other issues. You know what? Before this council, there had been a great famine, Saya, Beminithya Saya, for 12 years. Many erudite scholars, monks, they died, um, due to the famine. They had no food in Sri Lanka, no water, nothing, right? So there was a need to write the teachings of the Buddha somewhere in case if there is any other famine comes, then erudite monks or the monks who had been memorizing the teachings of the Buddha can, die. They can be gone. So there had been a need for the teachings of the Buddha to be written somewhere, right? Then if we just have a look at the reasons for the council, right? There are certain reasons, right? Basically, there are many, right? King Valagamba's favoritism to Abhayagiriya, right? So the king at the time, Valagamba, Duttagamini Abhay, he was in favor of Abhayagiriya tradition, but at the time, the main education center was Mahaviharaya, Jetavanaraman in Anuradhapura, right? So this had been two sects, two groups, Abhayagiri and Mahavihara, right? And during the Valangamba period, there was a famine of 12 years, of course. Many monks, they lost their life, right? Being victimized of this tragic situation in the country, right? And then, of course, there is another reason due to the invasions of South Indian rebels, right? Giri Niganta and so many could par in the something like that, people with such names from South India, they invaded Sri Lanka, right? So Sri Lanka had been, undergoing a pretty terrible situation at the time due to certain misconducts of the monks, of course, and due to the divisions of monks according to their way of practice. Grantadura, who studied Dhamma, and Vidarshanadura, who followed, Grantadura, Vidarshanadura, there had been two sects. Grantha means monks who memorize the teachings of the Buddha. Vidarshana means monks who practice meditation, right? And then there had been an increasing interest of people to study and practice Buddhism, and danger of disappearance of the senior bhikkhus and destructions of the Dhamma, right? So these are the, reasons of the fourth Theravada Buddhist Council, which was held in Sri Lanka, right? If you have done history, you know the reason, you know what had happened during the 12 years of famine in Sri Lanka and the political atmosphere at the time, right? Invasions from different invaders, foreign invaders, and Valagamba's favoritism to Abhayagiriya, right? Okay, then outcome. As a result of the fourth council, there had been certain results, avoiding the potential Tripitaka misinterpretations because they kept everything written in inscriptions and some kind of materials, right? So that there would be no any misinterpretations of Tripitaka, minimizing effects from the schism of Sangha, even though the Sanghas are separated, there would be no any kind of effect to the teachings of the Buddha. And writing version of Tripitaka may help reviving the Dhamma. Yeah, if you keep it written, it will last for a long time, from generation to generation, right? For centuries. The restoration of the Dhamma in Sri Lanka and in other countries, of course, protection of Dhamma is ensured. Writing the Dhamma on Thal leaves, which was orally transmitted, right? So far. So this is the Fourth Buddhist Council and its background, right? The Theravada Buddhist Council, which was held in Matale Alovihari, right? Then let's have a look at another Fourth Buddhist Council, which is basically Mahayana Council, right? So as I have mentioned, as far as the Fourth Buddhist Council is concerned, there are two. One is Theravada Fourth Buddhist Council and another one is Mahayana Fourth Buddhist Council, right? Okay, then this Mahayana one, it was held during the time of King Kanishka. The gathering was 500 and majority of them were Sarvastivada monks, a sect of Theravada monks called Sarvastivada, right? During the reign of King Kanishka, right, 230, between 230 and 162 AD, right, who was the main patron of this council, right? So that means several years after the council in Sri Lanka, right? Several decades after the Buddhist council, which was held in Matale, right? Leadership extended by Parshava Theru and Vasumitra Theru. These two monks were the leading monks. Duration of the council was 6 months, right? And the reason for the council was monks preaching the Dhamma in different ways. Still today we have these issues, right? Monks preaching the Dhamma in different ways, not the way how the Buddha had taught. They are mixing the teachings of the Buddha with their own opinions. Sometimes the genuine teachings are spoiled, right? So there had been an issue of that type, right? So they wanted to take immediate steps to sort out these issues, right? Monks preaching the Dhamma in multiple ways and rearranging the entire Tipitaka and write commentaries according to the Sarvastivadi tradition, right? This is the reason, right? And the results are simply composing commentaries, Attakatha for each Tipitaka, right? So the Sarvastivadi, in Sarvastivada Council, they wrote Atua, commentaries for each Pitaka. Atua means the teachings of the Buddha, what you can find in the Pitaka, they have been explained in a simple language. They have been elaborated, explained in detail. That is called Attakatha, Atua, Atika, right? Atua Atika onne kila kiyanne, right? If you explain something in detail or in a simple language so that the people would understand it easily, that is called Attakatha, Atua, right? Attakatha in Pali, Atua in Sinhala. Atua Atika onne is like that, Mato Padili Kirimon, right? Then another result, writing the Dhamma into brass sheets and enshrine them in a stupa. Brass කියන්නේ එක්තරා material එකක් brass තඹ sheets වල ලියලා ස්තූපයක තැන්පත් කරනවා. Enshrine them in a stupa. Translating Pali Tripitaka into Sanskrit. So far the Pali Tripitaka was, composed or used in Pali, but as a result of this fourth Mahayana Buddhist Council, the Pali Tripitaka was translated into Sanskrit. And emergence of Mahayana sect by taking all the sects into one. Right? Yeah, and dispatching Dhamma missionaries especially to promote Mahayana Buddhism, right? So in this specific council, Mahayana Buddhism was promoted, and some missionaries were sent to different locations to promote Mahayana Buddhism, right? Okay, finally, the messages given through Buddhist councils, group discussions, and teamwork can provide solutions to any problems. True. Taking measures at proper time may minimize future problems. So if you take measures at the foundation stage, so there would be, you can minimize the potential problems in future, right? So this is basically the overview of the first, second, third, and fourth Buddhist councils, right? So as I have mentioned, please have a look at the main points. When the council was held, where, how long, number of gathering, and the main sponsor, and the duration, reason, and the results, right? Each council has their own results, right? So when you are thorough with the background of the council, then you don't need to worry about anything, right? So I think it was clear to you, right? Okay. So everything is clear, I hope, right? So if you come up with any kind of problems, or if something is not clear, please comment in the comment sections, right? And you are welcome with any questions you come across, right? I am ready to help you anytime. Thank you very much.